The other night, your divine masculine found himself sitting alone in his room, staring at your pictures. The quiet hum of the room and the stillness of the night made the atmosphere feel heavier as he lost himself in your images. Each picture seemed to bring back a flood of memories, like a wave crashing into his heart. He remembered all the little things, the way your eyes sparkled when you laughed, the comfort of your hand in his, the long talks late into the night when everything felt so effortless, the times when your energy intertwined effortlessly, creating a connection deeper than anything he had ever experienced before. There were moments when the world seemed to fade away, and it was just the two of you, in perfect harmony, sharing the simple beauty of being together. He had never felt such a connection before, a bond so pure and unspoken, a bond that had made him feel alive in a way he hadn't known he could. For a brief moment, his heart swelled with warmth, as if it could feel your presence once again. The nostalgia wrapped around him like a comforting embrace, and he found himself longing for those moments. The laughter you shared, the joy, the love that flowed between you effortlessly. It all seemed like a dream now. But as quickly as this wave of happiness arrived, it began to dissipate, leaving him with an emptiness he couldn't ignore. In an instant, a cold and heavy realization washed over him, one that hit him like a ton of bricks. He had lost you, the person who had filled his world with light, the one who had stood beside him through it all, was no longer there. The space you once occupied in his life now felt achingly empty. The weight of this truth was suffocating, and he couldn't escape the sudden surge of anger and regret that gripped him. He sat there in disbelief, staring at your pictures, unable to reconcile the present with the memories. His mind raced, and his heart ached as he replayed every moment he had taken you for granted. He had thought there would always be time, that you would always be there, but now he understood just how wrong he had been. The realization cut deeper than he could have imagined. The anger that followed wasn't directed at you, it was aimed at himself, for not recognizing your worth sooner, for not valuing you in the way you deserved. He had been foolish, blind to the treasure he had in his life. You had been a rare, precious gem, and instead of cherishing that, he had let it slip through his fingers, distracted by the trivialities of life. I was so stupid, he whispered to the night, his voice barely audible, trembling with emotion. I didn't realize how much you meant to me until now. The words hung in the air, and he couldn't escape the bitter taste of regret. He shook his head, as if trying to dispel the overwhelming truth that had now become his reality. How could he have been so blind? How could he have let you go when you had been everything he had ever needed? His body trembled with the weight of his emotions. He couldn't sit still any longer. The walls of his room seemed to close in on him, suffocating him. So he stood up, his movements urgent, as if it could outrun the feelings that were consuming him. Without thinking, he rushed out onto the terrace, hoping the fresh air would cool his mind and ease the storm raging within him. But as he stood there, staring out into the night, the cool breeze did nothing to calm his recent thoughts. It only amplified the turmoil inside. The reality of losing you was too much for him to bear. How could he have been so blind? He realized now that he had taken you for granted, failed to appreciate the incredible love that you had shown him, and had not truly seen the gift you were in his life. The clarity of that thought felt like a punch to the gut. His hands clenched into fists at his sides, his chest rising and falling with ragged breaths. A wave of self-loathing surged through him. He had been foolish, arrogant, and now the price of his mistakes was painfully clear. He felt a deep, aching regret, and his heart burned with the guilt of knowing that he had lost Euless, the one person who had truly understood him. I was so stupid, he repeated, this time louder, his voice breaking. The words felt like they were ripping him apart, and the weight of his failure crushed him beneath its enormity. How could he have let you slip away when you had been everything he had been searching for? As the tears began to fall, he didn't try to stop them. He let them flow freely, unrestrained, and for the first time in what felt like forever, He allowed himself to be vulnerable. He needed to grieve. He needed to let the pain out. There was no one to judge him, no one to see him in this raw state of emotion, and for once, he didn't care. There was nothing to hold back now. "I'm so sorry," he whispered, the words breaking from his lips with the weight of 1,000 regrets. "I'm so sorry for losing you." His voice trembled, and though you weren't there to hear him, it was as if it was speaking directly to you, to your spirit, hoping that somehow you could feel his sorrow. For what felt like hours, he remained there, sitting on the terrace, staring up at the stars, feeling the weight of his mistakes, the weight of his regret, the weight of his lost love. He let himself feel every inch of the sorrow, allowing it to wash over him, knowing it was the only way to move forward. He blamed himself for everything, for every misstep, every moment of silence when he should have spoken, every opportunity he had squandered out of fear or uncertainty. He cursed his hesitation, his pride, and the walls he had built around his heart. He had let them grow too high, keeping you out when you had only wanted to get closer. It had pushed you away, and now, there was no one left to blame but himself. But eventually, after the tears slowed and the storm within him began to settle, something changed. He felt a shift to quiet, almost imperceptible change in his heart. The anger, though still present, no longer consumed him. The regret, though sharp, began to dull at the edges. He realized that the past was just that past. It couldn't be undone. The mistakes had been made, the choices had been taken, and there was no way to turn back time. He had to stop fighting the past and start focusing on the future, a future where he could heal, where he could find a way to forgive himself. The realization was liberating, but also daunting. He couldn't change what had happened, but he could choose how to move forward. He had to forgive himself if he ever hoped to find peace. He had to let go of the guilt and the regret that weighed so heavily on him. With a deep breath, he stood up from the terrace, his body feeling both exhausted and renewed. He looked back up at the stars, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he saw a glimmer of hope. The darkness that had clouded his heart began to lift, just a little, and he felt a sense of acceptance settle within him. He would never forget you, that was something he knew with certainty, but he also knew that he couldn't continue to let the pain of the past hold him captive. He had to find a way to heal. He took another deep breath, feeling the weight in his chest begin to ease. "I'll be okay," he whispered to himself, and for the first time in what felt like forever, he truly believed it. Please subscribe and like, comment for daily updates. Thank you so much for watching.